All right, the final trading day for the week. Trading is over, and yes, a week in the green. We're going to get deeper into that on the show today. And interesting enough, global markets, especially in the US, they're going down, but here we seem to be going upwards. The bulls are having the markets. Welcome. This is Market Pulse on News Central in partnership with Nairametrics. Here comes that breakdown of market activities for the day, and of course an analysis much later of the stories driving the markets. I am Joanna Mustafa. Let's begin with top stories from the global markets. We're seeing markets are still on track for weekly losses. Earnings season well underway. US stocks edged up before the bell this morning, and treasury yields of course slipped lower. This is following the break in its three-day loss streak. The S&P 500 futures rose roughly 0.2%. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures also added 0.1%, while contracts on the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 were up around 0.2%, just marginal gains. Stocks are reviving somewhat as we track a pullback in US bond yields, which is lifting some recent pressures on risk appetite. The benchmark 10-year yield slipped to around 4.19%, retracing a three-month high above 4.25% that it hit midweek. So, I mean, there are worries, of course, that the Federal Reserve will go slowly on interest rate cuts. The Dow and S&P 500 is still in position for a downbeat week after taking a hit from the surge. So it's not looking too bright, across the Wall Street, if I can put it that way. Global stocks are set to end the week as well lower as looming U.S. data and Japan's weekend elections curbed a rally already knocked off course by the close run race between for the White House and expectations that the Fed Reserves will again resist that rapid rate cut. MSCI's broad world equity index was steady today, but held for a 1.2 weekly slide week on week. That's its first weekly loss of the month, while European shares also started the day 0.2% lower. There are a number of pivotal events for the markets about to kick off. Japan's parliamentary election this Sunday. Then there's a keenly watched monthly US payrolls report that should have been released already today. Earnings are also due for, the tech mega caps Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Microsoft. And the US presidential election follows on November 5th. Not forgetting the Federal Reserve's decision 2 days after the election. So much to look forward to that will drive the markets globally in the weeks ahead. That's your global markets highlights. When we return, we'll come to the local equities market, which are moving in the other direction, in the green. Dive right in, right? Again, the local bulls, we're talking about the NGX, is in the green. 5 trading days in a row. It's been a while. We saw a full week where the market held steady, or the bulls held the market steadily, but this happens to be that week. 0.26%. We are seeing the market up just over 0.25% today. We can begin to play with the idea of, getting towards that 100,000, mark. We'll see what happens next week. And again, we did break that ceiling, 60,000 points. As regards market capitalization, that is what we are seeing on the NGX. Of course, the banking index was down a bit, but we did see a lot of gainers today on the markets, about 41 gainers and not so many losers on the markets today. I believe Aradel happened to be on the gainers list today, which is definitely a break of its bearish run of late. Top gainers, we are seeing chemical and allied products PLC, they manufacture and distribute paints, personal and household products, crop protection and public health products as well. They are taking the top gainers spot. What's interesting is we haven't seen activity on this stock in well over a month, and I mean in the last 3 months it's down to about 2%, but we're seeing activity today on that stock up 10%. Livestock as well rebounding up 10% today. Unicell, Maybaker and Rolex all completing the top gainers list today. Coming to the top losers list, we're seeing a lot of profit taking on several banking stocks. Broadly, they saw good gains yesterday, but today profit taking. We're seeing FBN Holdings, Access, GTCO, Zenith all in the red today. We know that Access was the top gainer yesterday, but it's in the red today marginally. Dow Communications, McNichols, FTN Cocoa, Fidelity Bank in the red today, and Champion Breweries as champs. I beg your pardon, there's a difference. Champs as well in the red today. So it's interesting to see what happened on the markets today. We'll see what happens. Let's come comes to the top traded stocks, banking stocks apparently had that had the charts there, UBA, Sterling, Access, and Zenith Bank. I believe it was just UBA that we saw in the green today on this list, a positive trade. But yes, when it comes to volume and value, those are your top traded stocks. The currency, the naira, is at 1,643 naira. The Kenyan shilling was unchanged against the dollar today, and the South African rand weakened in early trade today, with local investors warming up, of course, for the country's midterm budget next week. We'll be tracking all that and more. But up next, we'll have a deeper dive into what happened on the NGX today and of late with Chief Research Officer, Head of Business Development at PUPRIME Africa, Daniel Effah. All right, we're picking up the pulse of the day, of course, with activities happening this week overall on the NGX, today being the final trading day. We have, of course, joining us, Head of Business Development at PUPRIME Africa, Daniel Effah. Good afternoon, and TGIF to you, Daniel. Okay, it seems you're muted. We can't hear you just yet, but I'm sure you can hear me.
Okay.
All right, great stuff.
Yeah, good afternoon, Brad.
Yeah, great to have you. And of course, it was a bullish week this week. What are the renewed buying interest?
Yeah,
how are you feeling about what's happening on the NGX? It's been a while. We saw a full week in the green.
Yeah, I think we've not done that in a couple of weeks. It's just trading. It happens like that. Like I said, I think at the beginning of was it October, that the year is rounding down. Everybody's just looking at what particular stock or what shares they position themselves for the new year, while trying to still take profits on some particular stocks they've pushed in for at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
All around, I think it has been a good week. It has been a good week in terms of liquidity and profitability. Yeah.
In terms of liquidity and profitability, interesting. One of the stocks that has benefited from this rally is FBN Holdings. They have reached, over 28 naira 8 kobo per share on the NGX. That's from 26 at the beginning of the week. I mean, how is the capital raising exercise and other things going on? So how is this expected to continue to drive and impact the group's market performance, the price, and investor confidence?
Well, okay, so let's just look at it technically, right? 28, right? 28 naira per share. I think that should be it's close to the highest we've done this year. I think we've done over 35 already in around March, right? So this particular move might be looking like we are exposing the stock to 30 naira per share. So there is a bullish sentiment towards that stock at the moment, and I think that has to do a lot with the whole activities happening around FBN in terms of sector-wide. The banking sector is getting that kind of traction right now. Yes, going to an end. But as a company, they are also the capital raising is a major part, because at the end of the day, you are having a rights issue. People have access to more shares, and it's definitely mean more value for the company at the end of the day. So in terms of what it is trying to do structurally, yeah, it is a good one. And I think that it's on the bullish sentiment of it might push the stock to 30 naira in the coming days or weeks, even before the AGM happens, basically.
Okay, immediately before the AGM happens, believing it wouldn't be postponed any further. But we know that the stock Yes. We also know that the stock, has, joined its peers, the likes of Zenith and GTCO, as a stock now worth over 1 trillion, rejoined actually, because it's been there before. Its market capitalization at about 1.03 trillion on the NGX. Do you see it cementing its place? Because you're saying there's going to be more of a rally. Do you see it cementing its place in that category ahead?
Okay, so this is very critical because the company is at the point where there is a lot of activities internally. There has been a management change. The former GMD had finished his tenure. Mr. Wale Oyedeji is there now. that also is a conversation that people. So the AGM is really in November. It's really one of the most important conversations here because this price range, if it's already over 1 trillion, that means it's joining GT and what's the other bank in that conversation. UBA2 was there earlier in the year, but no longer there. So there is a possibility that FBN might also go back below the 1 trillion mark. All has to do with what investors will vote on in terms of what the real value for rights issue is. Because I think there was an issue in court that the bank later won, that then the rights issue was now rebased to 5 billion shares instead of the initial 8 billion. So the AGM, and of course the figures also come out for the bank in the past 1 year. So I think the AGM is a focal point for if FBN will remain in the 1 trillion naira club or not, right? Yeah. But personally, I will be going bullish on FBN based on what I'm seeing technically. Yeah.
Interesting. A lot of confidence there in the stock, but we'll see what happens in the build up to that AGM and even afterwards, where after the decisions have been made and announced. But we're also seeing Access Core. They account for a significant number, of total volume and shares traded in the equities yesterday, although they saw that profit taking today. Is there more that we need to know about what are the drivers here with Access Core?
I think that we should understand something about our stock market. Number one is the fact that the financial services play a major role. They are the major when you want to take the less risk as an investor. The financial services offer that platform, right? So, and in the recent times, we've seen a lot of bank issues, right? So, the reason why you don't see, you're not seeing the other banks also taking some of these drivers, some of this volatility and liquidity, is because of what's happening around the banking sector, the whole banking issues and here. But Access has positioned itself among the top 5 to be a bit stable, and that is why you see the market rally would be around the stock. Number one, when you have a lot of liquidity around you, most likely it's going to be because of the price of the stock, right? That is not a very expensive stock to acquire. So you see that movement will be there. So it is not really about what is happening with Access Bank as in terms of internal stability, governance, and all, but it is more about the mindset of investors at this point in time, right? So we'll keep seeing rallies towards the financial sector, and banks like Access Bank who are positioned would keep getting that number. At least for now, I think it is the 4th most liquid, most traded stock this week, for example, in the market, and it is reflecting sector-wide sentiment. That is also pushing even the FBN conversations also. So it is sector-wide, but of course you will see that certain companies will take the lead in terms of investor conversations.
And from what you're saying, certain sectors as well, namely the banking sector. Consumer goods.
So hold on, sorry. And if you're looking at the potential, the technicalities of it, you are still seeing there's a potential that Access will do a 25 naira per share again on the market in the next couple of weeks. So that is also a big possibility.
Okay, I mean, that's interesting. We'll be following all that and more. Thank you for those details. Let's move to another sector, consumer goods sector. The brewers, they haven't had it so well. Guinness Nigeria PLC reported a net loss of 12.2 billion for the quarter ending September 30th, 2024. What are your thoughts on this? And do you anticipate a turnaround with Tolaram, taking over its operations? We've seen what the Asians have done in various consumer goods, commodities. Do you see them, doing that again with Guinness Nigeria?
I think that we need to understand that the Guinness issue in terms of the losses recorded from the very high operating expenses, particularly with the FX, lost over 7 billion in terms of FX losses. The cost of producing rose by over 170 in the past year. I think it's a macroeconomic issue. It is basically a result of where they operate. Right? It is a Nigerian issue right now. And what Tolerant is doing is actually would actually help the company in the medium term. With the short term, until macroeconomic conversations change, I think that they still have to be a bit above the waters in terms of this. But of course, a management change, a takeover is always very, very positive, advantageous to a company of the caliber of Guinness. But over time, at least let's see how it goes in 2, 3, 4 years time. Yes, it should be a very good conversation. But for now, I think that what the first conversation from Tolerant definitely be about innovations around reducing costs of production, and that is a very dicey conversation.
Yeah.
So Tolerant, of course, have shown credibility, have shown very good numbers in terms of the previous companies and what they still have in their portfolio. But what is happening with Guinness is not particularly Guinness's fault in 100%. So they will still have to deal with that issue. And let's see. It's something that we'll keep monitoring and seeing what happens with the company as time goes on.
I mean, definitely, there are people already afraid of it as a sacheted beer, if I can put it that way, with knowing how Tolerant moves. But we'll see what happens in the turnaround and how investors perhaps, grow in confidence towards that stock. But from what you're saying, it's a rebound that we should probably expect in the midterm, not, definitely not immediate. All right, thank you very much for joining us, Daniel Effah, Head Business Development, PUPRIME Africa. It's a pleasure. Have a wonderful weekend.
And you too. Thank you very much.
All right. Up next, of course, here on Market Pulse, we have key metrics, so stay tuned for that. All right, you're still tuned into Market Pulse. Right now, we are getting into the key metrics, but we're still staying with the brewers, right? This time around, Champion Breweries, which is turning to the retail sector to fuel its next phase of growth. There's a focus on expanding production and staying ahead of market trends. Champions is inviting everyday investors, to join its journey towards a stronger market presence. And we know that this shift is not only, diversified its investors base, but also aligns with a broader strategy to stay competitive in Nigeria's dynamic brewery industry. Here's what's driving this new approach. First of all, production expansion. Champion Breweries plans to scale operations to meet rising consumer demand and explore untapped markets. When it comes to retail investor involvement, but they're targeting smaller investors. They aim to build a loyal base, that shares in its long-term success. When it comes to sustainable growth focus, the company intends to optimize operations, ensuring that steady returns will align with its future market shift. And we've seen that despite the promising outlook, there are challenges, right? And certain economic uncertainties. There's also competition, within that industry, which can pose as a risk for the brewer. However, with a well-defined strategy, we know that Champion Breweries is positioned itself to unlock new opportunities and, of course, deliver value to shareholders. We also know that this particular, brewer, they were the only ones within the industry to declare profits in, this 9-month period. So it's interesting to see whether or not the others will catch up in that sector, or whether or not Champion Breweries will continue their run on the markets. We'll be tracking, how this public offer turns out on the exchange, but that is it for today on key metrics. You're going to have to stay tuned for more updates next week with the latest financial stories that are shaping the Nigerian economy. If we take a step out of the country and look into Africa, what's happening across the exchanges in Africa, we're seeing that all the markets that we do cover closed in the green. There's something going on, because as the bears seem to have the global markets outside of Africa, the bulls seem to be stepping into Africa and taking a hold of the market. So it's great to see this. We will be tracking whether or not this spills into next week. But for now, enjoy your weekend. Catch us next week here on Market Pulse in partnership with Nairametrics on News Central, 4 p.m. West African time every weekday. I am Joanna Mustafa.